Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Lake Management Task Force meeting. It is Thursday, May 29th, and we'll call the meeting to order at 5:01 p.m. So the first item here on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Member Shelson?
Yes, if we could please, we would like to add a template for the subcommittee workflow document. This is
Great.
something that our working subcommittee is proposing,
Okay,
and
so then,
we'll add it. And with that, we would like to have that added to the agenda, please.
fantastic. So that then would flow into item 5.2. Now, to make that amendment so that we can add this additional template, we would just need a two-third vote on that. So, are there any other amendments or changes to the agenda? Okay, so as I see none, then that the Lake Management Task Force approve the agenda as amended, and we'll need at least two-thirds. Oh, sorry. Hi, hello.
Hi, Chair Dubik. My apologies for interrupting. I've recorded this motion as having been moved by Member Shelson. It will just need to be
Thank you.
seconded and then voted on.
Thank you for that reminder. So Member Andrew is seconding. So thank you for that reminder. So we'll now take that to a vote. Those in favor? Great, and that is moved. Thank you. We're moving on. Item number 3, the declaration of pecuniary interests. Are there any declarations to be made at this time? Okay, I see none. So if something does arise, please feel free to state it at that time. Moving to item number 4, the approval of minutes. There's the recommendation that the Lake Management Task Force approve the minutes of 2025-03-24 as amended or circulated. Is there a mover for either any amendments or circulation? Member Wickens? As circulated? Is there a seconder? So Member Lemoyne, I think I saw your hand there. Thank you for the second. Any discussion? Okay, we'll take that to a vote. Those in favor? And that is moved unanimously. Thank you. All right, so moving along to item number 5. These are items for discussion. So first on the agenda here, 5.1 is the terms of reference. That the Lake Management Task Force received the Lake Management Task Force terms of reference for information. There was a slight change. Just as a reminder, there was a slight change previously to include the Grace Level Conservation Authority as advisors to our committee. May I have a mover? Member Dempster, and a seconder, Member Wickens. Any discussion on this item? As I see none, we'll take that to a vote. Those in favor? And that is moved unanimously. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to section 5.2. This is the Lake Management Task Force draft work plan. So we did have a small committee made up of Member Shelson, Member Andrew, and myself. So we got together to prepare this draft plan for conversation here. And so maybe we'll take we'll walk through it first, and then we'll take a vote in terms of receiving the information. So I'll turn it over to Member Shelson and to Member Andrew to take us through the presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Dubik. Now, which version, who's going to be sharing this screen? I realize that the version that I have is a little,
I think Danielle's going to, right?
Danielle's going to share it. Okay, thank
Hi,
you.
Member Shelson. Yes, just give me a moment. I'm unfortunately not fully prepared to share, but I can do that momentarily.
Okay.
And I think in our last meeting, we decided to throw caution to the winds and used first names.
That's
Can we do that again?
sounds good to me. Okay. Thank you, Danielle. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, so what we're doing is this is the draft work plan as proposed by the subcommittee as for discussion and amendment. Um, okay, I guess next slide, please, Danielle. Thank you very much. So just to recap the terms of reference, we're reporting to the council, and our committee is responsible for reviewing the current state of the 4 lakes in question, Eugenia, Irish, Wilcox, and Brewsters, and to develop a lake management plan for each one of those. As the mandate goes, we got to review the current state of the lakes. We're going to research the best practices in lake management with a view for sustainability, ecosystems, and watersheds. And we're going to look at investigating, and we're going to come up with strategies for mitigation of, I would say mitigations on stresses on the lakes, focusing on aspects such as water quality, eutrophication, the nutrient loading, human use, invasive species, fishing conditions, and aesthetic considerations. The lake management plan for each lake will identify priorities for action, as well as potential funding measures and partnerships for the projects. And we're going to develop a public education plan. Now, is that Barb? Are you going to hop in here?
Certainly.
Thank you.
So this slide is for discussion, and that we wanted to put the goals and principles in front of everyone, while we go through the actual work. And they are, as you see there. I'm not sure that there's kind of anything contentious there or anything we need to kind of explain or go through. I would just ask everyone if there's any concerns or anything we want to talk about that should be subtracted or added.
Yes, and John?
Yeah, sorry. I'm kind of from a flood background, so as soon as I read that first line, support high water quality, can we
dear.
find a different word than high?
Okay.
I think it means high as in excellent.
I know, but it
Not as
also
in
can mean high as in high.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
If I may suggest, we could just take out the word high and just support water quality standards. I think that means exactly the same as what we might mean it to do. I'll throw that open.
Is there any other feedback on that?
I say it's Richard Lemoyne. I think we're splitting hairs with the high water quality. I think you'd have to go to extreme to say that we're referring to high water levels, because the high refers to water quality. If it said high water levels, then it'd be pretty clear we're talking about water levels. So I think it's fine to leave the word high in there.
Okay. So the team can take that away. Thank you.
Any other input? No, I'll take that as a no. This is something that we kind of started off with. It's been around for a while, so there isn't really anything kind of new, as it were. So I don't know that we need to spend a lot of time on it. So if that's okay, we can move on to the next slide.
So here what we're trying to do is we're just trying to list the community groups and stakeholders that we need to be taken to our consideration and that we may need to interact with. And if anybody else can suggest anyone that we've missed that might be significant, we'd certainly be very much happy to add those to the list.
Just is not substantial, but just in the future, it's actually the Brewster Lake Homeowners Association. Just so we get the right, it's actually an incorporated body, so we should probably get that right. So there's no apostrophe S, just Brewster Lake Home. The Brewsters, yeah, but not an apostrophe S. Brewster's Lake Homeowners Association.
Okay.
Are there
And-
any groups associated with the other lakes? Is anybody aware?
There used to be one for Wilcox Lake.
So maybe we'll look into that.
Because back in the mid-90s, I used to sample Wilcox Lake because of the weeds.
Hmm.
And at that time, they put a restriction, I think it was 5-horse motors on the lake.
Member Dempster just has a question. In terms of where does the data sit for that?
I have no, it was turned into the municipality at that time.
Thank you.
There is a program, Lake Partners, where up to 6 samples a year are taken and then submitted to the ministry who does testing on it. My wife and I have been the lake keepers for Brewster's Lake for longer than I can remember. I do know that there have been in the past for Wilcox Lake, and that they used to Eugenia, somebody did it, but probably the latest data, last time I looked, was at least 10 years old. So it looks mainly phosphorus levels is the one they track long term. So there is data out there. Unfortunately, the ministry has not approved a new contract with Lake Partners, so we don't know what's happening this year. And they still haven't published. They still haven't published last year's data from 2024 sampling.
Hmm.
I will send a link to everybody as to where that data is. I should have done that before too.
Okay, next slide.
Okay, this is a start of our examples of the kind of concerns that have been identified or that we recognize as needing to be looked at. Of course, there's the blue-green algae formations on Lake Eugenia, E. coli problems on the public beach, again, at Eugenia for now. And then the problems with pollutants from shoreline development or activities such as fertilizers for lawns and pet feces and oil and salt that run off into the lakes. Proliferation of the non-native invasive species, the zebra mussels, etc., and an issue or the concern of significant residential development along the shoreline at Lake Eugenia. And what we'd like to do is to talk about, have we missed anything else? Do we, are some of these not really urgent or pressing right now? And should we look at some kind of a community poll, which is going to gather concerns and input and allow us to decide where to focus our attention first? So if anyone has any comments on this, we'd be happy to take those.
just in that pollutants from shoreline development activities, should you
Mhm.
not include septic systems in that as well? Because I used to deal a lot with that at my last job.
Yeah, it does come up later in the work plan, but yeah, that's a good point, is that and I guess it could also be folded in under the residential development because all those residents have septic systems.
Okay. We could certainly add it to the list of identified issues here, because even though we do get into that coming up.
John Bittorf?
Yes, is there any concerns with the other lakes that you could add to this list? Because it seems really Lake Eugenia driven. The
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
yeah. We
So
know
speaking-
what we know, and we're kind of hoping to hear from folks from the other lakes.
I can tell you Brewster's Lake has not had an issue with either blue-green algae or any algae. I mean, the only thing we get is extreme pollen sometimes covering the surface, but in terms of any algae in the water, it's been near negligible, and the phosphorus levels would support the fact that there isn't a lot of material there to promote the growth of algae.
Is there any concerns there with Phragmites at all? I'm not familiar with their issues.
I don't think so. A lot of people say there is. We had somebody from Gray Sauble here, met with him probably 10 years ago. He looked at it, he says, yeah, it looks like Phragmites, but it's not. It's another reed. It's not, I mean, it's proliferating, but it's not doing what you expect with Phragmites to take the lake over.
Yeah, I think even at Wilcox Lake, I know I've had contact with people from there that were concerned about Phragmites. So I think just adding Phragmites under the non-native invasive species would just include the other lakes a little bit more.
Okay.
Good point.
So to member Sheldon's point, would there be any interest in doing a community poll to gain some feedback? So, I think while we have some identified key issues, maybe it would be helpful to both get some reinforcement on key issues, at each of the lakes, and maybe some other considerations that we haven't thought of. Any feedback on that question?
I guess the question would be, what's the process for gathering that feedback?
That's a good question. Actually, one of the things that we're doing, as we'll see later, is we're proposing a number of subcommittees to address basically specific facets of the lake management. One of those is communications, and we'd like to have. I mean, I'm jumping ahead of where we are, but I think what we would do is we'd like that communications subcommittee to look at basically both the questions of a poll and how to target the appropriate people that we want to get their concerns and input from. So that's really our the goal with exactly how a poll would look and who would be responding to it would be the bailiwick of that subcommittee.
I guess I would observe that this is kind of high level aspirational in that we're trying to identify the issues, and you already see the skew because it came out of the heads of people that know about Lake Eugenia. So if it would be nice to broaden the scope of the brains that we're trying to access from all different places and points of view. As to how we do that, it kind of depends. There's a number of ways of doing it, from simple to really hard. But I think we have to decide whether we want to do it before we figure out how we're going to do it.
And maybe I'll just add on to that in terms of a way to get it out there is, is like an online poll, like using something like SurveyMonkey. So that can be a very easy sort of technology kind of push. And in terms of getting, the communications out in terms of the fact that there is a poll, we can either do it, so we can do it via our the contacts that we know in terms of, say the associations, etc. If we wanted to gain some broader input on the poll, and we're looking for, say, more of a broader audience reach, we could consider asking the municipal council, if they would allow municipal staff, to help in the communication of the poll. So, say putting it on the municipal website and municipal social media. So, depending upon how we would like to target the audience, we can use our own networks and lake associations. If we want to go a little broader, given the fact that there may not be direct lake associations with Wilcox and with Irish that we know of, maybe a broader reach with the help of the municipality might be beneficial. Is there a reaction to anything that we've shared to this point?
Could you put a pamphlet in their tax bills? Their questionnaire?
So I would think, we would want to think about, so I'm not sure in terms of the timing of sort of the tax bills, but we could ask council and staff, to direct staff to help us in the most effective way possible.
The issue with tax bills is you're going to hit 95% of the recipients won't be close to a lake. I think, I know Eugenia is the largest of the lakes in terms of number of residents, but certainly around Brewster's Lake, I'd say the people adjoining the waterways are probably number 20 people. So it'd be easy to do a distribution for them. And I suspect both Lake Wilcox and Irish Lake would be easy to do that. So really the question would be, we could do that for all the lakes if somebody in Lake Eugenia would say, yeah, I can run around and drop stuff off in a mailbox. And then we just need a system to collect the results, probably online. It's probably the best. And you're right that SurveyMonkey might be a good way. So maybe the pamphlet just points them to SurveyMonkey.
Yeah, and speaking for Lake Eugenia, we have not 100% of the contact because we don't have 100% of property owners members of LAPOA, but it's a very high percentage. But going back to, I think we're getting bogged down in the how. Have we decided about the whether or not to do it? If we're talking about the how, I'm kind of assuming that we sort of think it might be a good idea.
I think if nothing else, to alert people that action is, well, I'm not saying action has been taken, but at least that we've identified that there's issues that need to be addressed. So I think getting that information out in itself would be beneficial, even if we don't garner a lot of valuable information coming back in.
I would agree with that. Is there anything more from this slide, or should we ready to move on? I'll take that as a yes. Okay, we'll move on. All right, so what we've proposed is we come up with 4 subcommittees, which will actually be doing the work of the task force. And our first proposal is that they be one subcommittee that's in charge of the actual writing of the task force report. A second, which is going to be responsible for education, communications, and outreach. Sounds like the perfect job for doing a survey. a research and monitoring committee, and a planning and infrastructure subcommittee. And we'll run through each the task force report committee is as I mentioned, is going to be actually writing that. Our feeling is that their influence is going to be, or that their work is going to be basically at the beginning of the process and at the end when they bring everything together to sum up. So our take on that is that the members of this subcommittee will serve dual duty on one of the other subcommittees as well. So aside from the writing of the task force, basically compiling the information from the various subcommittees as they go through their various tasks, there's going to be this education, communications, and outreach subcommittee. They're the ones that engage with the community and our stakeholders to promote the sustainable practices and stewardship activities for the health to end up with healthy lakes. And again, communicating with the action plan with the stakeholders, developing education campaigns for things like septic management, for natural shorelines and property management, and things like responsible boating. They're also going to be responsible for outreach to the agriculture community to determine the impact of the agriculture on the lakes and what the best practices are for things like fertilizer runoff and so forth. Barb, were you going to grab the next two?
I will indeed.
Okay.
So the research and monitoring is the more kind of scientific piece. Basically looking at existing research, answering the questions that have already come up about what testing is being done, has been done, will be done, addressing the gaps, and a look at getting some citizen monitoring going potentially, and just much, as I said, much more of the science stuff about what we need to understand and what we need to compile, and then hand that sort of thing off to the education thing if there's anything we want to disseminate. On the planning and infrastructure side, that would be a lot, kind of more in the area of with the municipality, and like we talked about septic and fertilizer bylaw and things like that, and the best practices around the boat launch and so on, and sort of developing what we'd like to see the end goal, and then working with the relevant bodies, most likely the municipality, to put that into effect. And this committee would also kind of dovetail well with the communications, because as an example, while there's movement of the mandatory septic inspection happening with the municipality, that is a period of time out before it actually will happen. But in the meantime, the communications folks can be developing a campaign to educate people that why septic management is useful and why the shorelines are important and so on. And that's it for me. So I think then, did we want to go on the, when we discussed this the other day, we were kind of thinking that a slight change to the number of members down at the bottom, where it would be 2 folks for the report and then 3, 3, and 3 for the others. But they definitely, as Ken said, that the people who are working on the report would likely also be on one of the other subcommittees. Does all that make sense? Any feedback?
And if I just maybe, I'll just provide a little bit of context of sort of how we got here. So we were inspired by lake management plans already done at the Kawartha, by the Kawartha Conservation at their multiple lakes. So as we perused through their lake management plans, we saw these buckets of work in terms of best practices. And so that helped to shape what you're seeing here in front of us. So that's a little bit for context. And then as member Andrew has stated, it'd be very helpful to understand, sort of what you're thinking about, the scope of work here. And then also, as we think about your interest in committee work. Thanks.
So I think this is where we ask the question, does this breakdown make sense? And if it does, who would like to attach their name to what committee? It's where the rubber meets the road.
Always best to volunteer early. I think I'd be, yeah,
Wise man.
careful what you get stuck with. Certainly the planning and infrastructure, probably where I would be the most useful.
Member Wickens, your hand was up.
Yeah, thank you, Nadia. So I think that I would be probably best suited to the education and communications. I think that's our first angle of attack. I think is to get people to realize the problems and that they can help. I would be quite happy to do that, and if somebody wanted some help in the research and monitoring part, I could help that, could help along with that as well. So
If I could, I'd like to volunteer for research and monitoring too. I had a science background at one point. And hopefully that would be helpful.
And I don't mean to put words in anybody's mouth, but I know that in our last meeting, Janine said that she was quite interested in the science part of it. So she might be, again, this is what happens when you can't come to meetings, you get volunteered. I'm going to suggest that she goes on research and monitoring.
yeah, I would agree. She had that. She stated that quite clearly. That's what she would like. So yeah.
So I'll volunteer. I can volunteer for the infrastructure.
I was going to say that one or research and monitoring. I'm good for either one.
Member Nimster, do you have a preference?
Pick one. Or both, or two.
Or both?
I'll do both. I've been involved in quite a bit of development, and I've been involved in quite a bit of monitoring. According to the ministry, I have a chemical engineering degree, so.
Uh-oh, another one. Me too.
I have a degree in applied ecology, but it was 100 years ago, so I don't use it very much. But I will put my hand up for the task force report and the communications piece.
So I would also be happy to join Barb for the task force report.
Well, we do have several members unable to attend, but I think we've got enough scope for those folks. Well, we've already volunteered Janine, but there was someone else I know that they could slot themselves in wherever. So does it look like we've got it populated?
And maybe if I can just ask Danielle, if how many members we could have on a subcommittee, given we have to watch it for quorum. So would that be up to 4? Is that correct?
Thank you, Chair Dubik. Yes, through you. A quorum of the committee at this point, based on the number of appointments, would be 5 members. So ideally, the subcommittees should be held at 4 or less. I have made some notes, just procedurally, when the committee is creating these subcommittees and appointing members. I do think that it would be in the best interest of the committee to move individual motions, just to identify the subcommittee, identify the members and the deliverables. I've been keeping track and drafting a motion for each one as we've been going along, but just to give us a snapshot of the members that have volunteered for each committee through the chair. If that's helpful, I can let the committee know who has volunteered for which. So for the report subcommittee, volunteers at this point are member Andrew and member Dubik. For the Education Communications and Outreach Subcommittee, volunteers at this point are member Wickens and member Andrew. For the Research and Monitoring Subcommittee, volunteers at this point are member Wickens, member Shelson, member McGowan, and member Dempster. So that would be one where I would suggest we would need the task force should be careful not to add additional members. We could certainly remove a member at a future meeting if one of the members who's not able to attend tonight would like to join that committee, just to avoid having a quorum. And then finally, the Planning and Infrastructure Subcommittee volunteers at this point are member Lemoyne, member Dubik, and member Dempster.
And then maybe just for clarity, I believe we're just missing member McDermott for a position. So that is something we can follow up with afterwards to gain his input as I believe. So as we have slotted member McGowan into the research.
If I'm understanding it correctly, we reach out to member McDermott, we basically have to tell him that there isn't a spot available on research and monitoring because we're at 4. Is that correct?
Unless we were to bump somebody or someone was to move over to another subcommittee.
And so then I think what I'm, so maybe we'll just finish off the presentation and then we can make the motions at the end.
I think, and who's talking about this one?
Okay, I'll
I don't understand my notes.
okay.
No, that's right. I'm talking about the timeline and you're talking about next steps.
Right.
There we go. Okay.
There we go. Thanks.
Props to Councillor Dubik for putting this together. I think it's nicely laid out. We have to bear in mind that we have a finite time frame of until September 26th. And so we've got the meetings already spec'd out every 2 months for the rest of 25. And we'll figure out what 26 looks like when we get closer to it. We're doing the formation of the subcommittees at today's meeting. The intention is to distribute this work plan and the template, and the subcommittees would beaver away over the next couple of months. And at our July meeting, we would discuss those. An overriding, not concern, but desire is to identify quick wins, so that we've got something to talk about and be positive about as part of, as we mentioned before, we need people to understand what it is we're doing and what the important issues are. And if we can put that as in a quick win context, it's all very good. The whole research and develop plans and so on is going to be ongoing throughout the term of this task force. There will be some recommendations to council partway through, and then at the very end, we will do the final report and presentation. Over to you, Ken.
Thanks, Barb. So next steps. Agree to the subcommittees and the members, which is going to be the motions that we're going to be looking at right after this. Then each of the subcommittees is going to go off, establish a schedule and a work plan with so that they can share basically the priorities for that subcommittee at our July meeting. There we talk about, now this is going to be, I guess, a function for the education and communication subcommittee, but with input from all in terms of developing a community poll for the task force input. And as Barb mentioned, we're going to identify the quick wins and develop plans in order to keep the momentum going, and so that we can point to progress that we're seeing, hopefully in the near term, so that each subcommittee can identify basically digestible chunks of work that they can take on in the near term as they gear up to some of the more challenging things that are going to take a little bit longer. And I think that's it for this slide. And I think, was that our last slide?
Well, I think, is there any discussion about that?
Please, yes, let's talk about this.
And just as a reminder, we also did add the template, to get into just some of the next steps for the next meeting for each subcommittee.
It's all good then? All right.
So should we look at the template for the work plan next, and then we'll talk about the motions?
Danielle, would you mind sharing the template with everyone? Thank you.
Okay. Now, again, Barb, I'm not sure which one, who is going to be talking to this one.
Could we zoom in on that a little bit? Go full screen and then zoom in.
Oh, that's better. So what we're proposing, and again, we'd love feedback on this, is that for each of the working committees, that they are able to come up with a list of their actions and break down with a description, if there is funding required, if there's who's going to be the lead, if we need to work with any of our partners in order to accomplish these. And then they're going to have to basically assess the priority of each of these in terms of potential impact, the affordability, community support, and assign a sort of a high, medium, low level to each one of these. And what Chair Dubik has done here in this example here, for the education, communications, outreach, she's identified 3 particular actions that will need to be taken. And again, it might be up to the subcommittee. They're going to work with these. They may break these down and prioritize these as they see fit. But this is what we really wanted to do, is sort of show this as a structure so that when we come back in our July meeting, we have sort of a format that's consistent. Barb, is there anything else that you'd like to say about this, or we missed?
No, I'm good. I'll talk about the
Okay.
timeline.
Okay.
Are there any comments on this? And then this is basically a timeline only for the actions, and who's going to be doing what. Yeah, I think we can kind of get into a bit more nitty-gritty as time goes on, and that right now we've got them subdivided as months, and maybe we want to kind of do it as quarters, or like it's hard at the beginning to get really granular. But as Ken said, the idea was we wanted to have a template that provides a framework without being a straitjacket, so that what we get back from the various committees and the different people with their different thoughts is something that is similar in structure. But without, like, this is, as I said, it's not a straitjacket, it's a template, it's a guideline. Any thoughts?
And I'll just add that, so on that first page, as using the education committee as an example, those 3 actions in that first column were taken directly from the presentation that we just looked at. So again, these can be massaged, they can be edited, they can be it's a starting point for the committee, but it's the responsibility of the committee to sort of take this as a handoff. This provides a little bit of structure and best practices that we've seen in different lake management plans, and so it's a jumping point. It's a jump off point for the committees to work on. And these are living documents, so it's not just like a one-shot deal. This will be something that can be worked on and morphed as we continue the work.
Just Dan Wickens here. Can you hear me? I'm on my phone.
Yeah, can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
So just to follow up on Barb's question, does this seem like a workable template for all? Are there any questions, edits, comments?
Silence is golden.
Okay, so if there's no comments at this point, agreed, we'll take that as it's a good starting point. And again, this is a living document, and each committee can morph, sort of the template and sort of the actions as they feel is fit, as they do the work. So I guess we're sort of at the. Are there any other sort of final comments at this point before we make the motions? Okay, so I'm seeing none. So if we turn to then our motions, let's first start with the that the Lake Management Task Force receive the draft work plan for information as the first motion, and then we'll get into the other ones. Is that agreeable?
Yep.
Yes, Danielle.
Through you, Chair Dubik, just procedurally, I think if the committee also wanted to receive the working committee plan template as part of that motion as well, as it was added to the agenda, that would be great.
Perfect, thank you. So then the motion will read, so receive the draft work plan and template for information. May I have a mover and a seconder? Member Dempster? And Member Lemoyne, thank you. Any questions on that? Any comments? Okay, as I see none, we'll take that to a vote. Those in favor? All right, that is moved unanimously. Thank you. And then the next motion will be the motion for the task force report committee, so that the task force report committee includes, the membership includes Barb Andrew and Nadia Dubik to move forward on the work on that stream. Danielle, is that motion sufficient as stated?
Thank you. Through you, Chair Dubik. I think that would be okay. I have also drafted a motion similar to what you've indicated. I also added a clause that the report subcommittee create a written report and action plan, including the key deliverables identified in the draft work plan. I also included that the report subcommittee adopt the committee plan template in carrying out their work, and that the report subcommittee report back to the Lake Management Task Force at a future meeting.
Okay, great. So thank you. And of course, the intent is for that first draft to be shared, at our next July meeting. So with that motion, and so I believe we have to take these separately. So we'll do that 4 times. So this is for the task force report committee. So I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. So I'll take that member Andrew as a mover. And
I was actually swatting a mosquito, but that's okay.
Yeah, but that's okay. I'll take that movement. And member Shilson as a seconder. So those in favor? Okay, so that is moved. That's the first one. Okay, so the next one would be as per the details as stated, but for the education. So it's the Education, Communication, and Outreach Committee, which is made up of Dan Wickens and Barb Andrew. May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Wickens or Member Wickens and Member Lemoyne, thank you. And any final comments on that? As I see none, we'll take that to a vote. Those in favor? And that is moved unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so the next committee, so it would be for the Research and Monitoring Committee. So the membership of that committee is made up of Ken Shilson, Janine McGowan, we got Member Dempster and Member Wickens. May I have a mover and a seconder? Member Wickens and Member Dempster, thank you. Any final comments? So I see none, we'll take that to a vote. Those in favor? And that is moved unanimously. And then the final committee, so that's the infrastructure, the planning and infrastructure, with the membership, Member Lemoyne, Member Dubik, and Member Dempster. May I have a mover and a seconder? Member Lemoyne, Member Andrew, thank you. Any final comments? As I see none, we'll take that to a vote. Those in favor? And that is moved unanimously. Thank you very much. And thank you to the committee who worked on this. That was really good work. And it's moving everybody forward. So thank you for all of that. Okay, so we're moving along in our agenda. So we are now on item 5.3. And so the committee received, or the task force received some updates and documentation from the Friends of Lake Eugenia. That the Lake Management Task Force received the documents related to the Friends of Lake Eugenia Water Quality Improvement Project for information. Can I have a mover and a seconder before we open the floor for discussion? So mover, member Shelson and member Dempster, thank you. So the floor is open for discussion. And, just as a quick recap here, the Friends of Lake Eugenia, have done some research work over the past few years. There was a phase 1, phase 2 research paper that we do have in our directory. The thought after those 2 papers was to look at a alum solution. And now with continued conversation, discussion, and investigation, the solution is now looking towards I'll call it sort of this cone solution to oxygen that sit on the bed of the lake for oxygenization of the bottom of the lake. So the floor is open for discussion. There is a lot of information that has been provided by the Friends of Lake Eugenia. And one, and when we think about the research and monitoring committee, so as committees, we do have the ability to reach out to partners and stakeholders to better understand, issues at hand and to move their work forward. So that committee could always reach out to the Friends to better understand, and if they have any questions, and to have sort of the appropriate discussions. We as a task force also have the opportunity to invite outside members to this committee, to this task force, to our meetings, if we wish to have a more fuller discussion and sort of question period. So that is also an option to this committee. So if, there is a lot of work that's been done, by the Friends. So if that is, the wish of this task force, we have the ability to, for example, to invite them to one of our meetings as well. Member Dempster.
Yes. I've read a lot of the reports that have been provided. I'm glad to see they're moving away from the alum dosage, which is good. The oxygenization I want to look into more, because there's 111 years of biosolids and sludge at the bottom of that lake that has to be dealt with. Because it was farmland, 1,200 acres of farmland. And it just might stir a lot more than they want to deal with. Just my thoughts.
No, thank you for those comments.
The reference in there that what I've read in terms of the charcoal, it seemed interesting, but there wasn't, I think, a lot of detail at this point. I think I think it's obvious that we need a little more research and investigation to find out exactly what they're talking about and what sort of, quantity of cones or charcoal needs to be used. I mean, just before, and what's the effectiveness, and is it, a long-term solution as opposed to, something that needs to be repeated every few years.
So member Shelson, I'll just kind of probe on that a little bit more. Is that a bit of a wish to invite
Yeah,
the
that's
friends?
just I'm just commenting that that's something that the I guess the Research and Monitoring Committee perhaps may deem worth looking into because I mean sounds good, but we need some more information. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, very fair. So thank you for that. So the research committee definitely has the opportunity to further have those conversations. Now, would the task force like to invite? So I'll just put that out there. Would the task force like to invite? As a full group here, would we like to invite them, say, to our next committee to be able to have a Q&A and a little bit more understanding?
I think it would be a good idea.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay.
Now, again, is that something we don't need a formal motion for that at this point? We need to, I
Yes,
guess,
we do.
investigate. We do need a motion.
Yes. So why
Okay.
yeah, so for sure. We can continue on the conversation and we can kind of deal with all the motions at the end to see if there's anything else coming out of this. Okay, so let's just pause on that for a moment.
Okay.
Yeah. So John?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what the Friends are looking for from this task force. It sounds like the Friends are going ahead with the project regardless. So are they looking for an endorsement from this group, or are they just sharing what they're up to? It's again, I haven't seen the footprint that they're going to fill on the lake bed, or the infrastructure that has to be built around it. I always get concerned when something's being built behind the dam that it could get washed into the dam and create some serious problems. So I just haven't seen the detail of what they're actually proposing besides the concept.
Yeah, thank you for those comments, John. So we as a task force are not call it a governing body, and we don't have a direct. We're not a direct decisioning partner on this. They have been proactive to help share the information with us to ensure that we're sort of keeping in sync, as a larger community and as partners and as stakeholders, looking at healthy lakes. I think the clarity maybe about who does make the decisions, who are the decisioning body on the ability to move forward with that project would be no question posed, I think, posed to them.
I can speak to that a little bit.
Mm.
I mean, in short, I think this new concept, I don't think requires permitting from the Ministry of Environment. OPG may have something to say. I'm the VP of LAPOA, and together with the president, we have been working alongside, let's call it, with the Friends over the past X years. It's an interesting dance, and there's going to have to be a lot of thought put into that. Like when we were talking about the alum piece, there was a discussion about before you do anything, there would need to be a kind of a baseline analysis of the kind of limnological situation. And you would also need to repeat that X amount of time with the alum. It was a simple thing, say before and after. With this kind of continuous presence of this equipment, maybe there's ongoing monitoring and something, and that has a dollar attached to that. I think my personal opinion is that the permission body will be the bank account. That there's any of these solutions plus the monitoring is going to cost a great deal of money. And before that money is to be raised, I think we have to, as you said, we have to research this significantly and also convince all the various stakeholders. I tend to think primarily of the property owners around the lake, but there are more than that. But my sense is, I think from the POA's point of view, we're just at the beginning of this discussion about this new scenario. I don't know whether the Friends think we're at the beginning or we're at the end. I can't speak for them.
Thank you for that additional information and color, Member Andrew. Any further discussion on this item? Okay, so as I'm seeing none, we did hear that, so Member Shelson, believed you wanted to move the motion
Okay,
to.
yes, okay. Go ahead. Yeah, just to make it as general as possible, that I would like, we should invite the Friends of Lake Eugenia to report on the current status of their research into addressing the phosphorus situation in Lake Eugenia. How does that sound?
I think that sounds good, and I'll just turn to our acting deputy clerk, Thompson.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Dubik. I think that's great. The committee can certainly move a motion to invite the Friends of Lake Eugenia to come to a future meeting. I will just point out that we do have a motion on the floor, so I would suggest that this is an amendment to that motion. That was all I had to add.
Okay, great. And in terms of maybe just the date, maybe would we like to state that for the next, I guess maybe like as soon as possible, like to the next meeting. So hopefully they'd be able to come to our next meeting is July. Is that right?
Yes.
I think that's right. July. Yeah. So we would want them to come as soon as possible. And hopefully that's the July meeting. Okay, so that is an amendment to the motion. So moved by Member Shelson, and can I have a seconder for that amendment? So Member Wickens. Any further discussion on that? Okay, as I see none. Oh, Member Andrew.
No, sorry, finish the motion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so in terms of this amendment, I'll just take that to a vote. Those in favor? Okay, so that is moved unanimously. And so now we move to the motion as amended. So in terms of the motion as amendment, is there any final comments? Member Andrew, did you have a comment here?
I just wanted to point out that the LAPOA annual general meeting is going to be in June, and we haven't finalized things with the Friends yet, but they typically do speak at that meeting with an update. So, I mean, it wouldn't be kind of the same as, in this forum where there'd be sort of fewer people and more opportunity to answer questions. But I'm just throwing out there as an opportunity to hear that information.
Great, thank you for that, Member Andrew. And then maybe we can circulate the date and time and location, all the coordinates as an after the meeting. So thank you. Okay, so we'll take this to a vote for the amended motion. Those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're moving on to the consent agenda. So in our consent agenda, we have a number of documents listed here. And so what this represents is all the documents that have been consolidated into our shared drive that we can use in terms of, all the research, all the articles, all the documents to move our work forward. And as a task force, we do want to ensure that we are transparent in the work that we do. And so as we do receive documentation into our shared drive that is available to us as a task force, we do include it in our agenda so that it is shared and available to the public as well. Now, so typically how we manage the agenda for the consent agenda portion. If there is a desire to make a motion separately on one of these items, so if there's an action that we do want to take, we typically just pull it out because we want to have a very specific discussion around it, and there's an intent for a different motion to be had besides receiving it for information. For the rest of it, so if we just keep it all intact and receive all of this for information, we can still speak to anyone we wish, but we're just acknowledging that there's no other motion or action we want to take. So is there any documents or any items on the list here that you would want to extract because you'd want to make some sort of different motion besides just speaking to it in general? Okay, so I see none. So what I will ask for then is a mover and a seconder for the motion that the items of the consent agenda be approved. And could I have a mover and a seconder for that? So Councillor Member Wickens and Member Dempster. And so now we'll open up the floor just for general discussion, and then we'll take a vote after we finished our discussion. So the floor is now open if we wish to speak directly to any of these items and any of the documentation. And I would like to also thank our representatives from Grace Sable Conservation Authority who have provided a number of their documentation as well to share. Maybe I'll just first pose sorry, Councillor Wickens, did I see your hand?
Yeah, you did, Nadia, yeah.
Thank you.
I am glad to see, well, I think we're moving away from the use of aluminum, as you can see in this one article about the use of aluminum and the Alzheimer's, the connection there between that and aluminum and stuff like that. And it's, I don't know, we've seen, depends on who you talk to. Some say it's fine, some say it isn't, yeah. Well, they said DDT was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and thalidomide was great too, and both of those didn't turn out very well for anybody involved with that. So, yeah, that's all.
Thank you for those comments. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? If I may pose a question maybe to John, would you mind maybe just, so Grace Sable has provided a number of articles here that are very, very helpful and for resources. Would you mind maybe just providing a few highlights of what has been provided? So, as we go back, we can read into some of those documents in more fully on our own time, but maybe if there's a few highlights you'd like to just kind of guide us, would be much appreciated.
Okay, thanks. We didn't have a lot of information on the other 3 lakes besides Lake Eugenia. So I provided some old Ministry of the Environment reports that might have included those lakes as well in their studies. So some of those old reports are good to see as to how good the water quality has been for these lakes. So and again, a lot of these studies go back into the early 70s as well. So those reports are very interesting to read, especially when they talk about Secchi depths and chlorophyll A. So Secchi depths, we can definitely, as volunteers, continue to monitor on the lakes. Chlorophyll A costs money. So the 1976 study that was, I think it was University of Waterloo completed the Hall study. that's probably the most comprehensive study I've ever seen on a lake. So definitely worth the read, especially the water quality side of it. But they also tried to address where the lake's at as far as carrying capacity. So they had several matrices that they tried to apply to the lake, and every single one of them said the lake was over capacity. So it's a good read. We did do it was really a note to file that I wrote back in 2009 that was addressing all the information we had on the lake. So if you haven't read that, please read it, and feel free to ask me questions on it. It was essentially concerns from our office that as staff moved on to different departments or whatever, that that information be lost, or the history that was putting pressure on the lakes and the studies. So it was just an effort I made to try to put everything down on paper. But that all predates the work that's being done by the Friends of Lake Eugenia. So I don't have anything in there regarding their reporting. Our link to our water quality map, definitely worth a look at. We keep that up to date. As soon as we get water samples in our database, we've already started this season. We do update that as soon as we can. So it's essentially it's a 5-year summary of the data, and then there's also a link to historical sampling. So all the samples that have been done historically, that can include some of the really old reports as well. Some challenges with water quality data: as the labs change their techniques, sometimes the data responds. So you may see some places where suddenly total phosphorus is looking really nice, and historically it was kind of mediocre. So just things to watch. There are changes to lab procedures. There might have been something with chloride as well, where they've got better detection limits. So something always to watch. If you need help with that map, let me know. Sometimes those Google Maps are a little messy or confusing, but try not to use it on your phone. Try to use it on a laptop or a bigger screen. It can be challenging. I did include some old reports, some fisheries management reports, just because they were discussing the fish communities at the time and their perception of what the water quality was like. So just trying to put some history there, so there's no there's no doubt that it used to have brook trout in the lake, and water quality was quite nice at one point. So any one of those reports, feel free to ask me about, but they're just things that we had in our file library. So not reports that we commissioned, but we just had them on file. Does that help?
Thank you very much for that overview. I do see a Member Wickens.
Yeah. Just a question. I was just looking at the link map and about the total phosphorus, and this was published just a little bit, well, not quite a year ago, and I see a lot of lakes with a lot higher phosphorus. Can anybody give me an idea as to what would be a normal phosphorus level? Like I see Lake Eugenia is listed as quite low, and where do we get into the trouble? Like the numbers.
If I may, usually there's total phosphorus. They use two different units for it. So I'll talk about milligrams per liter. So 0.01 milligrams per liter is usually a good target to stay at or below.
Right.
0.02, you start getting above that, then it's you're going to start seeing nuisance algae problems on lakes. For streams, they even go to 0.03 as being the point that they start to see nuisance algae. But it all depends on the depth of the lake and the nutrient loading as to what the lake historically should be like. So that's basically the target. Lake Eugenia can, in places, historically, that 2000 or the 1976 study, I had a map as part of my report that showed how often it was exceeding that 0.01 criteria. So that's always something to think about. It's not about averages and stuff. It's about how often it exceeds the thresholds.
Yeah, when it spikes, then the algae comes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. So it's so be careful when people use averages talking about things in the environment, natural things. We usually look at the 75th percentile as saying, well, 75% of the time it's this number or below this number or
Yeah.
above, whichever way you're looking at it.
So-
We started doing sampling after I wrote that 2009 report at the Causeway and at Side Road 35 and at the outlet to the penstocks, just to try to, we don't have a boat, so we couldn't do lake sampling, but that's the best we could do from the roads or the bridges.
Right.
Any follow-up, Member Wickens?
No, I just was curious about the numbers and yeah, and well, the testing too, you know, when it was done, and that's fine. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Member Andrew?
Just to follow up on that, in that, these are complex ecosystems, and I don't think you can kind of look at a concentration of X to say this is why we've got problems. And that certainly the more phosphorus there is in the water, the more kind of nutrients there is available to algae. But the short ice time and the warmer water in total are also factors. And as I understand it, I think what the studies showed is that there's 100 and X years of sediments in that deep section where there is some coming out of the sediment because of the low oxygenation. So I'm not sure any of that gets picked up on sampling, is what I'm saying. Just another point, I just remembered, I don't know if anyone's talked about this before, but about 10 years ago, we did a fish study on Lake Eugenia, commissioned by a biologist. Then we had a camera stuck down at the bottom of the lake and watched. It was great fun. You could watch fish swimming by. And there was kind of an analysis of where the fish went and what they were and what kind of health they were in and so on. I think there's a public version of that. If there's interest, I could post that as well.
Yes, so just as a reminder for everybody, so as you do find any, if you recall any interesting documentation, research, etc., please do continue to add to our directory and maybe CC the committee, when the task force, when you do add, so we know there's something new that's been added, and then it'll show up again on our agenda in this consent section. So thank you for that. I do have a question for John Biddorf. So with regards to sort of all these additional documents that you've added, and I haven't gone through all of them yet, but thank you for adding them. Is there any sort of anything around zebra mussels? So we've seen, sort of we want to talk about invasive species. We've seen the, sort of the zebra mussel, start to rise in terms of population rise in the lake. Any research around that as well?
Thanks. Yeah, there's a fair bit of research on it. One thing I noticed with the Friends reports is they failed to address the contribution that the zebra mussels have, the impacts they have to the lake and to the algae community. So zebra mussels, I don't know the exact year that they started showing up in the lake, but it's definitely over 10 years ago. So they tend to be selective feeders. They don't like the blue-green algae, so they can eat everything else but the blue-green algae and cause the algae blooms to happen that way. So that's a potential influencer on Lake Eugenia and other lakes. If you go to DFO's website, they specifically will say, and where they talk about zebra mussels, that where they're introduced, you will see blue-green algae blooms after that. One of the studies that I shared, the climate change one, was talking about Michigan Lake, where the lake had zebra mussels and they also had blue-green algae blooms. And during the couple of warm summers, the mussels died off and the algae blooms stopped too. So the lake got warmer, but the algae blooms were decreased. So it was pretty much a direct relationship to the zebra mussel community. Something that'd be nice to see would be some kind of a zebra mussel monitoring on the lakes, just to track how dense they are, just to know what kind of contribution they're having. I know at the outfall below the pen stalks, I used to sample the benthic there before the zebra mussels showed up. And now that whole area is just blanketed with zebra mussels. So it just shows how the zebra mussels are actually going into the Beaver River down below. So I think I might have been one of the first people to identify zebra mussels in the Beaver River itself. So
What's
just things to consider. What's that?
What's the best way of monitoring zebra mussels?
I'm just doing some quick Google searches, and there's a few volunteer type programs where you could hang a brick below a dock and then raise it up every so often, about once a month, and then you count the individuals on it. Ideally, you want to be in the shade with it, and you might, depending on the water depth, you could hang bricks at kind of different depths. So they had kind of a reporting sheet that they would do as a Michigan site, I think it was. So, and then there's also, if you have a cobbly area that you're actually able to see the stone and the covering with the zebra mussels, and it's always, mark out a 1 meter area and then start counting individuals. Or if it's really dense, then you mark out a much smaller area and count them. Or you could just lift stones and count them and say, here's a stone the size of my fist, and here's the number of critters you have on it. So it's kind of a qualitative process versus a really good quantitative, but it can still give you a sense of how, I'm going to say, profuse the community actually is. The Chesapeake Lake report, the follow-up report after the lung, talked about what happened to the lake after the zebra mussels came in. While the lung was working. So all the good things they were looking at for the lung to do were all accomplished by the zebra mussels. So they're very powerful. Chesapeake Lake, I think they estimated the zebra mussels were filtering the water every 9 hours, the whole lake. That's how profuse the population was. So very powerful influencer, and I challenged the consultants with their report to talk about that. But a lot of my comments weren't addressed in the final report. So if they said I reviewed the report, I did, but I didn't see any of my comments addressed in the final report. So I don't know if the committee would want to see my comments on that, or whether I just leave that alone.
I'd like to see them.
Yeah, so that is my concern. It's the timing of the zebra mussel showing up is similar to the timing of the blue-green algae blooms. That's the concern. The dead zone in the lake has been there for a long time. And my challenge to the consultant was, how was the phosphorus getting from that area, that deep pocket, to the rest of the lake? And I didn't get a response on that. So there's different, again, it's like you mentioned, it's a complex community. Lots of things going on out there. There's different drivers in different areas of the lake. It's just sometimes everything's just so diffuse that it's just not one single point source that can be a problem. So it's very challenging. That's why in 1976 report identified concerns, and it's taken us 50 years now to sit down and really talk about them. So it's hard to do something about something that's not one single problem.
Okay, and thank you for that. And just as a reminder, all relevant documentation can be added to our shared drive. So thank you. Member Lemoyne.
Yeah, just going to add a comment about the zebra mussels. I know Bruce's Lake has, the best of my knowledge, 0 zebra mussels. I have a ladder on my dock that when I pull it out every year, there's algae, but there's no zebra mussel. And that's because we don't allow a power boat. So I know nobody's brought a boat in that's being into another lake, which is a source of contamination. And we don't have any blue-green algae. Our phosphorus level in Lake Partners data is slightly lower than Lake Eugenia's, but not like significant. Like we've consistently below. We use micrograms, but below 10. So the existence of the zebra mussels might very well explain the significant difference between the two lakes just based on phosphorus.
If I can add, can you make sure you're documenting you're not seeing zebra mussels? Because that's always the key point with some of this monitoring is when did they actually show up? So if you're not seeing them, that's important information too.
So who would I document that with?
Your lake partner thing, can you make comments when you submit it?
No, we ship off the samples whenever we do, and I mean,
okay,
yeah.
Then that could be part of a recommendation from this task force is let's set up a database system people can report findings to. And even if the finding is no, it's not there, that's great. But usually people focus on the fact they saw it. So, but it is something that we need to watch for.
Yeah, so that's a great thing for the research and monitoring committee to think about. Thank you for that. Member Andrew, did I see your hand?
Since we've got John here, I wanted to ask another question. Have you heard anything about the efficacy of biochar on blue-green algae?
Is this what the cones are proposing?
I don't know anything about the
Okay.
cone. This
Yeah.
is a separate thing. I think over on Marl Lake, they've been using them for a number of years, bags of fancy charcoal, basically. And they say that it filters out the algae and the toxins.
Personally, I haven't seen a product that way. I have heard of people putting hay bales in the water and basically trying to encourage all the zooplankton that feeds on the algae. But I haven't heard of the charcoal bags.
LaPo is going to have a look at that. That's not going to address the source, but it'll address the symptoms if it works.
Yeah. The question is how are you going to know it works?
Well, again, talking to the local folks, they've been doing testing.
Yeah.
And
It's all about getting this data together so we can see, okay, what's working, what cut, if we had a bad year. I also mentioned to the friends group that, heavy rain events could be washing nearshore nutrients into the water that could be, within a week, you're having the blooms in the nearshore area. So there's lots of different things to try to track that might be of interest. Also mapping where the geese are feeding on people's lawns and stuff. That could also be key because that can be getting washed into the water as well. So one comment I like to make, I don't know who's actually doing this, but whoever's recording the days of the algae blooms and taking pictures and stuff and putting them on a map, that is very powerful information. So I want to encourage whoever's doing that to keep doing that because that's the timing of everything is so important.
yeah, maybe we could do some drone footage or something like that.
The drone footage would be good if you're worried about the weed growth and monitoring the extent of that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, so thank you, Member Andrew. Any follow-up to that?
No.
You're good. Okay. Any further comments, discussion points? Okay, so I'm not seeing any, but again, our repository is growing, so lots of really great articles to dig into and read on when you have the time to do so, and a lot to also help support the research and monitoring committee there as well. So thank you, John, for that commentary on the documents. Okay, so then we'll take this to a vote that we're So accepting these items for information. So those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right. So we are now on our last section here. So for our next meeting, our next meeting is scheduled for July 31st at 5 p.m. We did have one request from Vice Chair McGowan. She's having some challenges making the time and the date, just given her work schedule. So there was a request a request to possibly
Oh, we've lost her.
believe was for the Monday.
My apologies, Chair Dubik, you just cut out there, so you may need to repeat. We got that you were speaking with Vice Chair McGowan, and then you cut out.
Oh, thank you for that. Okay, thank you for that. So yeah, so there was a request to see if it's possible to move the date. So either given just work schedules, so either the Monday before, which would take us, I'm just taking a quick look at our calendar, and Danielle, I'm not sure if you can help me with that date. Is that the 28th?
Through you, Chair Dubik, yes, that is Monday, July the 28th, and I have consulted my calendar, and I can see that that evening is scheduled for the public planning hearing, the monthly public planning hearing, which is 5 to 7. Alternatively, I'm not sure if Tuesday the 29th could be a consideration.
Yeah, so maybe that might work, and it's challenging if one of our members isn't here. I think the other issue was the timing. Danielle, can you help me out here? If we do a later start, like 6:30, because I think that's what Member McGowan did indicate, that she's available after 6:30. Is that an issue for just in terms of logistics from the municipal side?
Thank you, Chair Dubik. Through you, I could make that work. It's really, I guess, my availability to take minutes and run the Zoom. The July meeting is also scheduled to take place in person. So that would mean access to the municipal office later, which is not a problem. Ideally, it's at the will of the committee what they wish to do. Certainly a motion could be moved to change the time or the date of that July meeting. What I would suggest is that the motion should be moved with a 2/3 vote in favor, just because we are changing a previously agreed upon schedule for the group. But certainly I can make anything work.
Okay, so I appreciate that. And so Member Wickens.
Yeah, I don't know if this would work or not, but we're going to be there on Monday from 5 to 7. What was wrong with scheduling the meeting at 7? And then wouldn't have to ruin 2 nights of Danielle's evening.
So that would be, I guess, a question to this group, because that would be a 7 to 9 meeting. So again, that would be, that's a question to this group, if 7 to 9 would be an acceptable change. Member Andrew.
Are we just talking about the July meeting? Or are we talking about the whole schedule?
So I think we should first just talk about the July meeting, and then at the July meeting, I think we should just regroup and then confirm how we will continue to move forward. So would a July, so if I'm getting my numbers right here, So it's Monday, July 28th from 7 to 9.
I'm fine with that.
Acting Deputy Clerk Thompson, please.
Yes, sure. Through you, Chair Dubik, I might suggest that so the public planning hearing meeting is virtual, and we can be uncertain as to what time those meetings may or may not end because we don't know what could be on the schedule at this point, this far in advance. There could always be the chance that it would run later than 7.
Sure.
Also, I think logistically for yourself and Councillor Wickens, it might be more ideal for the committee to meet virtually if it was going to go after. Those are just kind of the logistics that I could see there. Just my input.
Yeah, no, those are good. Those are good points. So why don't we? How would the Tuesday in person? So that would be then Tuesday, July 29th at 5 p.m., 5 to 7 in person. Is that acceptable?
Does that fit with Janine's constraints?
So from what I understand, it does because her constraints were Wednesday to Friday. And I'm just going to go back to the email as well.
That's fine with me.
Okay with me.
I can make it
Good.
work.
Yeah, so folks, I was just pausing here for a moment just to confirm, but yes, her email stated not available until 6:30 from Wednesdays to Fridays. So so then maybe Tuesday would then work.
Yep, fine.
Are we getting nods from everybody? Because I do want to ensure that this is acceptable for all.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So then we'll take that to a vote then as an official vote. So that the Lake Management Task Force meeting. Sorry, do I need a motion for that specific motion?
Through you, Chair Dubik, I have drafted a motion,
Thank you.
and we will need a mover and a seconder that the Lake Management Task Force agree to change the date of the next task force meeting to Tuesday, July 29th, 2025.
Great, at 5 p.m. Great. So then may I have a mover and a seconder? So Member Wickens and Member Dempster, thank you. I'll take that to a vote. Those in favor? And that is moved unanimously. Thank you very much for your flexibility. And again, that is also in person. So we will have the opportunity to meet, which is always a benefit. Well, I do want to thank everybody for their time tonight. Maybe just as a quick reminder, we'll just drop the template into our shared drive. So please do feel free to start reaching out to your committee members and moving forward before we get to our last adjournment. John, please.
Sorry, I don't want to make this too long. I'm just, anybody that's having a subcommittee, and I'm just wondering, if they wish to invite me to attend, can they? Or is the subcommittee totally different than this group?
Yeah, so as an advisor, you're not an official member. So I see our acting deputy clerk just disappear. So I think I'm on the right track. That then yes, then you would be able to, because you are a partner. You're not a member of this committee. You're not a voting member, and so therefore you're a partner. And each subcommittee has the ability to reach out to partners and members to get their work done.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea. He can work with us, and especially with getting the message out to the public. We want to be sending a correct kind of message. So, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Great. So then, so thank you, John, for extending the opportunity for committees just to reach out for any questions and clarifications. Thank you. All right. Member Shelson.
Thank you, Chair Dubick. I was wondering if we could just sort of, in order to sort of keep our things rolling along, if perhaps we could have one person from each of the committees volunteer to kick off and just ensure that their first meeting happens in a relatively soon time frame. And I'm happy to volunteer to do that on behalf of the Research and Monitoring Committee. And each committee should have somebody here step up and make that happen.
Oh, I see. To make sure that the work is moving forward.
Right. Just for the first meeting, get there first, and then the committee will decide among themselves how to proceed after that.
Okay, so let's just quickly do that. I know. So let's just quickly do that. So on the task force report, so Barb, I'll leave you in charge to reach out to me. On the education, it's Barb and Dan.
Yep.
So Dan, are you going to reach out?
I will reach out to Barb.
Perfect, thank you. On the research, can you agree to get things rolling? And then on the infrastructure, is there on the infrastructure, I'm happy to get that rolling. All right, so before we adjourn, we've got a plan. Thank you so much for that suggestion, Member Shelson. And Member Andrew?
Thank you.
Just circling back to something John said earlier, I would very much like to see your comments on the studies.
Great. And so John, feel free to drop that off in the, if possible, in our repository directory.
Okay.
Does that need to be received by the group first, or should I just submit it to the research subcommittee? And then they can...
Well, I'm not part of the research subcommittee, but I'm very much part of the LAPOA group going forward. So I have interests side of the task force, seeing that information.
So for anything that is of benefit to the whole task force, feel free to drop that off into that larger repository, John, as you have done for the other documents, and that's acceptable.
All right, maybe those you just want to email to me, if that's possible.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm hearing two different things. So, Barb, you want it emailed directly to you, but everyone else still wants it in the package, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
I don't want to make you do two things. I thought if it was an either or, yeah. No, if you just put it on the package, that's fine.
Yeah, I'll put it in the package, and I'm sure there's some way that we can notify you that it's there, or I'll email it to everybody, and Danielle can put it in the package for me.
Yeah, so please, and maybe just as good process here, this is a good point. So as people do submit things to our shared repository of documents, just CC or just please email everybody to let them know that it has been deposited, so that we're aware as soon as possible, so that for anybody who needs or would be interested in, in reading that documentation, they have the ability to do so as soon as possible. So we'll just leave that as a principle of how we manage that directory. Is that acceptable? Great, thank you. All right. So I do want to thank again everybody for your time. Really great discussion. And so our last item here is for adjournment. So that the Lake Task Force adjourn at 6:49 until the next meeting or until the call of the chair. May I have a mover and a seconder? Member Lemoyne, Member Dempster, and all in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much for a great meeting, and we will see you in the